Thank you for your cooperation. Please know that, again, all refreshments here on the left-hand side of the room, coffee, tea, water, and pastries will be available for the next 2 hours. So please know that will be available, and then lunch will be served at 12. So thank you for being here. We'd like, again, everybody to take their seats. We are going to get started. We have quite a big dignitary list to go over. And so, again, we'd like to thank you for being here. It's really an honor to really host this Tourism Forum event together with the Guam Tourism Travel Association, together with the Japan Guam Travel Association. And we'd also like to welcome our Korean Guam Travel Association partners. Together with the Guam Visitors Bureau, we're all excited to hear from the different panelists. And I'll go over that agenda real quick. In the meantime, I'd like to welcome our dignitaries who are here with us today. Of course, starting off first with our Governor of Guam, Magahaga Guahan, Louis Leon Guerrero. Thank you for being here. We do have our Speaker of the Guam Legislature, Ms. Therese Kalahi. Also with us is Senator Frank Blas, Jr. Senator and our Vice Chair of our Tourism Committee, Mr. Jesse Lujan. Senator Jesse. Senator Tina Munoz-Barnes is supposed to be here. I don't see her yet. We have Senator Sabina Flores. Senator Tello Taidagui. And we have Senator-elect Mrs. Shelley Calvo, as well as Senator-elect Miss Sabrina Salas Matanani. Sorry, I also see Senator Chris Duenas. And Senator-elect Mr. Tony Yada. Yes. Yes, please point out if anybody else has walked in. We have a dignitary list here, but I want to make sure we collect everybody's names and recognize them appropriately. We do have representing the government, our guest speakers. We have Ms. Melanie Mendiola from GHRA. Representing the airport, we have Dr. Ricky Hernandez. And of course, one of our guest speakers, we have Acting President, Mr. Jerry Perez. Together with Jerry, we do have our directors. We have Ms. Nadine Leon Guerrero and Ms. Dee Hernandez. Together with the GBB team, and of course, we have a full table from the Airport Authority as well as with GHRA, and we want to thank our government partners for being here. Representing the GBB board, we have our chairman, Mr. George Chu. Our vice chairman and chairman of the Recovery Task Force Committee, Mr. Joaquin Cook. Board member, Mr. Milton Morinaga. Board member, Mr. Ken Yanagasawa. And Ken-san is also on the GHRA board. Thank you, Ken-san. And then we have Mr. Bill Nolt. And Bill is on GBB as well as JGTA and GTTA's board as well. Thank you for being here. With our partners, I'd like to recognize the Guam Tourism Travel Association. We have the chairperson who's going to join us in a little bit for welcoming remarks, Ms. Jabina Lujan. And we have some of our founding members, Mr. David Taidinko, Akihiro Tani-san, Monty Mesa, Brad Kloppenberg, Simon Sanchez, Steve Kasperbauer, and our co-moderator for today, who's also a founding board member, Mr. Jay Merrill. The GHRA board, I'd like to recognize our chairperson, who's also going to provide welcoming remarks, Ms. Marie Guerrero. Our first vice chair and past chairperson is Mrs. Sophia Chu Wigston. Our treasurer, Mr. Sudipta Basu. And I know we recognize Yanagisawa-san, so I'd like to recognize our restaurant vice chair, Mr. Darren Talai. Our allied vice chair, Mr. Jim Herbert. Our board member and host, Mr. David Baldwin. And our newest board member, Mr. Frank Cruz. Representing the Japan Guam Travel Association, and with GHTA, we have the chairperson, president, Mr. Aoki. Sorry. Aoki-san is Aoki Hirazaki. And we have Yasuhide Torigoy-san, longtime board member. Hiroshi Misawa. Yasuhiro Sato. And Yoshiaki Kanemitsu. Of course, our Japan consulate, our vice consul, Ms. Kobayashi. With our KGTA representation, Mr. John Koh, one of the founding members. Thank you again, everybody. If I missed anybody, I'm sorry. Oh, hello. You snuck in. If everybody please give a warm welcome, round of applause for our Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Joshua Tenorio. Thank you. We'll put that as your name card. All right. Thank you again, everybody. I'd like to welcome Mr. Bino Lujan, together with Ms. Marie Guerrero, and then, of course, our Honorable Governor. But Jovina is going to open up with a few remarks. Thank you.
Good morning and hafide. Welcome to our Beyond the Horizon meeting on the state of Guam's tourism recovery. On behalf of the GHTA Board of Directors, let me express our gratitude for taking precious time on all your hectic schedules to join us today. It's our sincerest hope that you will find today's discussions and productive and beneficial in your respective roles, whether you are in the public sector or the private sector. Our aspiration for today's meeting is to serve as a catalyst for universal understanding, the continued exchange of constructive solutions, unified engagement, and support for tourism's fragile recovery. Suzumasi, welcome.
Oh my goodness, look at the power in this room. On behalf of GHRA's board members, the members of GHRA, thank you so much for coming out. We are closing out a very critical, yucky 2024 with the hopes of a brighter 2025. So with today's forum, we're hoping that we get clarity, a roadmap to recovery, which we all in this room unitedly would like to have. So it's good for the industry, good for the island, and thank you so much for coming, and thank you for the presenters to give us that roadmap to 2025. Sujusmasi.
So, of course, it is a roadmap, and we are going to get started on this rather quickly. There is one dignitary we'd like to recognize, Mr. Min Oh. He's the Vice Consul General for the Korean Consular's Office. This is our agenda. We're running a little bit behind because we have so many people, and we're excited that you're all here. But we would like to, of course, really thank our leader, Governor Lilian Guerrero, who really has done a wonderful job in making sure that we do make tourism a priority on Guam. And as Dravina said, you know, we wanted to give a theme, and it is to look beyond the horizon, because today's challenge is to look not just from our perspective of what we see on that horizon. I think we've all done that. But we have to look beyond. What other opportunities are out there? What's further out there in the distance? And how can we really capture that and know that really there are opportunities still? Tourism can make up so many different options for us. Tourism is alive and well. Outbound markets have really seen great growth in other markets, and we're really excited to see all of this. And here to help with that vision, strategy, and leadership, I'd like to give a warm welcome to our Honorable Governor, Mrs. Lou Leon Guerrero.
Sujus Masi, Mary. Yes, there is a great number of powerful men and women in this island. And it's because we are all very concerned about our economic engine that drives our economy, and that is tourism. I also want to say and thank you to the leaders who have put this together. It's something long time coming. And I'm very appreciative of all of you guys here to hear from everybody what we can do to again recover our very fragile tourism. You guys are all in businesses, and one of the things that you, of course, always focus on and work hard is financial stability of your businesses. We did the same too when we became governor and lieutenant governor. Our biggest focus was to stabilize the finances of our government, because you see, if we don't have that, we do not have the means to advance, to progress, and to provide for our quality of life for our people in our island. So finances is very key. Josh and I entered into our administration with an $83 million deficit. Within 2 years, we retired that deficit, and now you have seen 4 fiscal years of surpluses mounting to over 100 million cumulative. That is because of strong fiscal policy, discipline, and working closely with the legislature for prudent budgeting. And so we want to say that to you because we want to let you know we are just as concerned about your finances and your ability to provide the strength of our economy and tourism. Yes, federal money pumped into during the pandemic. Yes, local spending stood it up. And tourism was gone for 2.5 years. And now we need to bring it back. And I know all of you are working hard to bring it back, but it's been slow, very slow. And so one of the things that we need to do is to continue rebuilding that and continue sustaining our tourism ecosystem. What have we done that we can say to you, we are serious about this? I went, and Josh went, to a tour with GVB. And the purpose there is to try and get more people to come. You see, we can do everything we can within our means to improve our destination, to improve our product, to improve the culture, the environment, the traditions, and all of that. But if we don't have the people here, we might as well give up. We have done studies that show the behavior of tourists now has changed. They want more cultural sustainability, more substance, more feeling that they know the people and the destination that they have visited. That's one of the things that I think we need to shift some of our attention to that. What we did in Korea is, of course, we knew that. And the Korean people are our market, and you guys, you have your own market there that you do. The demand to come here is there. People want to come. They do. Even though we're a little bit expensive, they still want to come. But the flights are not there. So what we did with GVB and some of our government leaders, we met with the head of TY, head of Jen Air, head of Jeju, and head of Korea Airlines. And we presented. I said I did not want to go there if we are not going to offer them anything for them to come. So at our meeting with our GVB Korea market, they were only budgeted $1 million. I said, that's nothing. That's an insult to the market. We raised it to $8 million right there. And what they did was they thanked us because now they can really go out there, really, and market our product. We presented to these heads incentives. We worked our strategy before we got there. The airport was willing to give a total cost of about $10,000 per flight for these airlines. That's going to help them with the cost. At that moment also, Mr. Ken, I'm going to put you on the spot, Ken, and Mr. Ho, I don't see Mr. Ho here. They all both decided that in their hotels, they're going to start doing early check-in. Those airlines were so appreciative for that because you see, now they can switch some of their flights to night flights. So now people can come, check in early, and then they feel like they got an extra day. Because then they don't have to wait till 3 in the afternoon to check in. They've got an extra day. And now they feel much, much more satisfied. I also want you to know, I don't know if you know Shinhan card services in Korea. I'm sure you guys know. They are the largest card services in Korea. They have 29 million customers using their Shin card. They did a study here, and they found that the Korean tourists that use their Shin card here spend a lot of money. They saw a financial profit for them. What did they do? They are totally promoting Guam now. Totally. What does that mean? We've entered now a population of 29 million people. And they are providing benefits. They are saying that if you use your Shinhan card, you can have 1 night of free hotel and 30% discount on food and beverages. You guys get on board with this one because you are going to be benefiting from that. And I'll tell you, people that went there made decisions right away in order for us to incentivize and to get more people to come and more flights. The biggest limitation for them is their airlines, their airplanes. They have put 10, I think Korea Airlines said to me that they have ordered 12 airplanes, and they only got 2 so far after years of ordering. So that's another challenge for them, but it's not like they don't want to come here. They do want to come here. So if we can work our creative juices and our ideas and our thinking on how we can get that to happen, certainly, I think we'll be way on our way. Ricky tells me that already one of the airlines is going to increase their flights. We are also focusing on Taiwan, and I'll tell you why. The foreign minister of Taiwan told me that the Taiwanese are afraid to go to China now. but the Taiwanese like to travel. So, hey, here's a market that doesn't want to go to China anymore. Let's get over there and get them to come over here. And that's what exactly GVB has done. China Airlines has opened. I had asked the foreign minister, can you work with your government to bring more airlines here? And not more than 2 months after I spoke to him, China Airlines launched their flights. Another issue, too, is the United Airlines is starting to do their flights also. Let's focus on Taiwan. They are our allies, and the president of Taiwan came here. Let's use him to promote Taiwan, right? We just need to think, and we cannot say, oh, no, we're not going to do that because they're not going to do that. Well, you won't know until you ask. And the worst that they can do is what? Say no. Then think about other ways to do it again. Really. And I say all of this, and I'm really very passionate about this, because this is our engine. This is the driver of our economy. When President Kennedy opened up travel in the 60s, our island boomed. We saw people coming. We saw investors coming. We saw federal monies pumped in. People had SBA loans to the yin yang and were able to provide a housing for them. These are the kinds of things that have given us opportunities, and we need to continue taking advantage of those opportunities. I also want to know, because investors tell me this, they do not want to invest when our mandate for lease is only 5 years. We all know this. As investors and business people, you are not going to pump in millions of dollars to invest in housing, buildings, the economy, tourism, other kinds of industries, additive manufacturing, aquaculture, telecommunications, data center, if we can only give them a 5-year lease. So I asked the legislature to please revisit that, because that's very critical to the movement and progress of investment into our island. Very important. And I see new senators here, and I see new leadership here, and I see Senator Jesse Lujan here, who is the head of GVB, and believe me, Jesse, you're going to be working very hard, because these people are going to make you work very hard. We need to be all together. We need to be all together on this, you guys. It cannot just be the administration. It has to be private sector, administration, the legislative body who makes the policies, who mandates our destiny, and to be serious about our tourism. So when they come down and ask you for some funding, we need to really look at that very carefully, because it must be a priority. It must be a priority. No question about it. It's given us life since the 60s, and we'll need to continue sustaining. I also ask the private sector to invest in your hotels, to invest in your restaurants, to invest into your cultural events and programs, to look at different ways to motivate. My Pilates teacher, Mieko, just told me she biked 65 miles yesterday. Apparently there was a Korean biking event yesterday. She said she's never seen so many Koreans on bicycles. And she said, and there's one Japanese, Mr. Ken. It wasn't Mr. Ken. But anyway, do you see what I'm getting at? And we all need to work together. Let's, Let's not be isolated in silos and be territorial. We need to all work together, and GVB needs to be the lead on this one. The board and management, they have to work very well together. No divisiveness, because we cannot afford that. We cannot afford that. So I ask you, when you do your discussions, think carefully about other ways that we can incentivize. Think carefully about what we have done in the past. One person told me, a leader in the industry, said, Governor, the tourists forgot about Guam because we were not there for 2.5, 3 years. We need to get back and educate them again about Guam. And what is the one unique thing that differentiates us from Vietnam, Thailand? And that is, it is a U.S. experience. Let's hone on that again. I mean, it's back to basics. Guam, where America's day begin. And these are people that want to come and experience America. So, in closing, I just want to say, we have all the key leaders here. We have all the great people that make decisions right now. Let's make those decisions, develop and enhance the roadmap, and let's all be clear in what we need to do. Bring the people here, air incentives, improve our destination, revitalize your hotels, your restaurants, get with the culture, work with the mayors. They are very key, and I don't see any mayors here. But let's not forget the mayors, because they also want to be part of the destination. Why can't we go out and say, hey, Mango Festival is at this time. Come over. I mean, we go over there for their, ice? Their sculptor. And we go over there for their cherry blossom. Why can't they come over here for our orchids? Or our mangoes, or our bananas, right? Or our paddling, our waters. Lots of ideas. So anyway, I don't want to take a lot of your time. I will be available. Josh is available. We're very open, you guys. I think I've met with a lot of you already. We're very open, approachable, and we'd like to work with you. We'll work with the senators and the legislature to move whatever policies need to happen to get us back to where we were pre-pandemic and even more. Because I'll tell you, a $2.3 billion industry that gives us $250 million in taxes is not a lightly thing to take. We have to protect that. Thank you, Sidus Masi, and Merry Christmas, and have a great discussion.
Thank you very much. Again, it's inspirational, right, to see the leadership of both our governor and lieutenant governor come up and really help bring everybody together. And just so you know, GHRA was going to save this. We're going to be having wellness tourism in February and March with Limerati. So we could start with the government agencies and our members. We're planning to do some corporate treats and also wellness tourism. It's kind of a joke because I think what you're saying is we need to work together and have more programs and initiatives. But honestly, that's what a lot of the hotels have already started, is a lot of the wellness type packages and programs like that. But we have more to share on that. But going on to our guest speakers, and for those, we'd like to invite them up to the podium. Please, we do have Mr. Jerry Perez joining us here as well. He'll also be in the later panel, which is on the agenda, to answer questions. But we'd like to invite Ken Cook, together with Jerry Perez from GVB, and of course Mel Mendiola and Dr. Rick Hernandez up to the panel for the first panel of the day. And representing the airport, I'd also like to recognize, in addition to Alfred and Rolando, who everybody knows, and Frank, we do have some board members with us. Our Vice Chairman, Mr. Vic Salti. and longtime board member, Mrs. Lucy Alcorn. Oh, yes. I'm so sorry. I know. And Doyan Morado. She wasn't there earlier. Sorry. So, yes, I really appreciate GVB Airport and Gita being here. It's important we always have our government partners together with private sector. And so we appreciate you being here. If we could get you guys to help come up to the stage. As you all know, we do have Mr. Ken Cook is not only the vice chairman of the board, he's also the chairman of the Recovery Task Force Group. And of course, Mr. Jerry Perez has been a past president, but also he's acting president at this time. And then Mr. Ricky Hernandez, he is the acting executive manager of the Guam International Airport Authority, also known as AB Wampat Airport Authority. And Ms. Melanie Mendiola is the CEO and administrator for the Guam Economic Development Authority. So the program will be based on GVB going first, Gita, and then airport. So thank you.
Thank you. Howdy, everyone. Thank you for being here this morning. As you've already heard, there's so many important people in the crowd, powerful people in the crowd, and people that we really need to come together to make any plan that is presented work for our island. A lot of what the governor just said rings very true in everything we're faced with today, and the plan I'll be presenting will touch on a lot of those items and those issues that she spoke about. So as we jump in, or actually before we jump in, I just want to let everyone know and remind everyone that this plan I'll be presenting is a short-term plan. It's not a long-term strategic plan to guide us to year 3, 4, 5, and beyond. It is a focus on actions that can start immediately for impact in 2025. So some of these items in here will get us the quickest realization of benefits for our tourism economy, which is what I feel we all need and we all want to hear about. An updated long-term strategic plan will be following early next year, sometime in 2025, with elements such as the rebranding, repositioning, new markets. Gov spoke about Taiwan and other markets in the region, and as well as enhanced training for a lot of our members. And lastly, before we get in, I just want to thank and recognize, obviously, the governor and LT for their support, the GVB board for all their support they've given, as well as GVB management and staff who are here today, and most especially the recovery committee members who have been working on this, some for over a year. So I just want to highlight the work of Ken-san, Kenya Nagasawa, Mr. Ben Ferguson, Sam Shinohara, and of course, Mark Baldiga. So these are 4 guys that have been really instrumental in a lot of this work. And the plan that they put together is something I think that's going to really make a big difference. So jumping right in, as Gov just mentioned, tourism has been Guam's #1 industry for decades. In 2019, arrivals reached 1.6 million, with 88% of those arrivals coming from Japan and Korea. Philippines, Taiwan, and other destinations close by to Guam are also important, but due to the need for significant and urgent improvement, with this plan, we're focusing primarily on Japan and Korea. As we all remember, travel restrictions from COVID started in March of 2020. Let me see, I don't have a pointer here. Okay, sorry. Okay. Hawaii lifted the restrictions after 7 months, while Guam's were lifted after 16 months. But by the time Japan and Korea had lifted their respective restrictions, we had been closed for 2.5 years. And then, not to help at all, just as we reopened, we were hit by Typhoon Mawar, and then, same time, the weakest yen in over 35 years. Top onto that, high construction costs and lack of manpower, limited revenue for 4 years have made it very difficult for companies to fully repair their properties and put the needed investments back into their businesses. Our main problem is that both public and private sectors' products have deteriorated as the cost of Guam is very high due to inflation and the strong dollar. Just some economic impact, the Gov mentioned some of this, but in 2019, we had $2.4 billion in economic impact from the tourism industry, creating 23,000 jobs and contributing over $250 million in tax revenues. In 2024, based on current spending per person, we're missing out on almost $2 billion in economic impact and $200 million in taxes, and of course, thousands of jobs. So what is the current situation of travel? Japan is still recovering. As we all know, outbound travel is now at about 65% of 2019. Guam arrivals, however, are only at 30% of 2019. Our market share in 2019 was at 3.4% and is now 1.4%, which is the drop of 59%. Looking at all the destinations where Japanese are traveling, a 59% drop in market share is the worst recovery in the world. This is partly due to the yen, but we can't contribute it all to the yen because, as you see here, Hawaii and the US has not suffered as bad. Hawaii's market share is only down 24%, but a part of their market is condo owners and people visiting friends and family from Japan. And while the USA market share is down only 16%, but much of the travel for US is for business. Nevertheless, we feel Guam's market share should be better, and we feel that a fair market share should be down about 30%, which would be the cost from the yen, which represent a 2.4% market share of outbound travel and not 1.5. Here's a graph. There's a lot going on in this graph, so I'll just walk everyone through it. The light blue bars represent arrivals, and if you can see, arrivals have come down. They've been trending downward over the years, but there's a big drop in 2020, you see, and now we're down 70%. The green line represents our market share, which you see was at the highest at 5, and then kind of leveled out at 3.4% in 2018, 2019, 2020. And then now we're seeing market share of 1.4, 1.5% in recent years. The exchange rate is in yellow, and as we all know, the big move in there, yen is now worth half it was in 2012. Jumping over to Korea. Korea outbound travel has pretty much recovered, and in 2025, it's expected to exceed 2019. Guam arrivals, however, are still only 50% of 2019, and the won is a little higher, only 14% higher. Our market share in 2019 was 2.6 and is now 1.3, again, drop of 50%. This, we're attributing this mostly to lack of flights. Arrivals from Korea have stalled from 23 to 24. 23, remember, was Mawar, so we had a fall in flights there, but it hasn't grown at all since then. So it's still forecasted to be about what it was in 2023. So there's been no increase in flights from Korea, or arrivals from Korea. Airline seats in 2024 declined compared to 2023. This is in part due to the merger of Korean Air and Asiana as they pulled back on flights until that was done. And in Q1 of 2025, next year, we're expecting fewer flights than we did in Q1 of 2024. And this is as of the data we have. I don't know if there's anything new that we'll hear from Ricky later, but possibly. So in 2020, in January, just before COVID, there were 95,000 seats from Korea. In January of this year, January 2024, that had dropped down to 54,000 seats. And now we have only 40,000 seats. I think we might have a little bit more expected in January of 2024. But still we see there's a huge drop in air seats from Korea. Bottom line is we need more flights. We need more airlift. Japan has fewer seats than in 2019. They did see a drop in seats, but that's still enough to support the demand coming out of Japan. The data we have shows United Airlines is running below 40% load factors, which is not sustainable because then they're going to look for more profitable routes. And once aircraft moves, it's very hard to get them back. So this means we need to support United with some co-op marketing. Korea, on the other hand, flights are running at over 80% load factors. The problem then in Korea, like I mentioned, is the seats, right? We need more seats to fill that demand. And not having that many seats for simple demand supply economics increases prices of seats as well. Korea outbound market share is climbing. More and more Koreans are traveling, but our market share is falling. So we're not capturing that increase that we should be doing. Similar to the graph on Japan, the blue column again is arrivals. As you see, there's been a drop. The green line is our market share, which also really dropped. fell from 2.6 to 1.3. And the red line is the yuan. There wasn't that much movement. The graph makes it look like there was, but it's a 14% difference from 2012. Okay, so our key challenges, decline in product quality. Our public and private areas are tired and run down after years of closure. Rising construction costs have made it hard to bring them back, and there's a lot of customer dissatisfaction. Limited air service, primarily from Korea and Taiwan. This might change with the announcement of United's Taiwan flight, as well as China Air coming. But still, we need to bring that up. Rising costs due to the inflation and the strong US dollar, and then increased competition both internationally and from the domestic travel within our market countries. So in the bottom right-hand corner here, this is what our rivals would have hit if we maintained market share from 2019 at 3.6. So 1.2 million arrivals is what we would have had if we never saw the steep drop in our market share. So turning the page now, that's kind of a good or a brief explanation of where we are, the realities of what we're faced with. So turning the page, where we are versus where we should be. The high scenario on the far right column, all the way here on the right side of the screen, assumes 2019 market share was sustained, which we don't feel is realistic due to the yen weakness. But the mid scenario, the middle bar on the right graph, is reasonable with a 35% drop in our Japan market share and 25% for Korea, yielding 900,000 arrivals, which is double our current arrivals. The low scenario of 1.8% market share represents a 50% drop of Japan and 30% for Korea. Without active intervention, which is some of the initiatives we're proposing in our plan, there's no reason to expect any change in our current market share trend, which is represented by the light blue bars. This would mean 600,000 Japanese and Korean arrivals in 2025. The red bars, however, represent our goals with our plan's initiatives, representing 830,000 arrivals from Korea and Japan in 2025. The difference between these two, with intervention and without, is 230,000 arrivals. This increase in arrivals, the delta of 230,000, represents several $100 million in economic impact and about $60 million in tax revenues, and of course, bringing back many jobs. The 833,000 arrivals goal of the plan matches the optimistic scenario that was presented in GVB's 2025 fiscal year budget. So that number is already there in GVB's budget as optimistic. We think that should be our target. So the question everyone wants to know is, how do we get there? As you can read here on the slide, each key challenge has specific tactics to attack. For product decline, destination improvement. Limited air service, airline support. Rising costs, targeted marketing to bring value back, and obviously competition, so rebranding and repositioning. So before we can kind of jump in, it's important that we begin to accurately portray the industry's crisis situation. This is a poll that was put online by the PDN, I believe, just before the election, and it was a question about what are your priorities, and tourism is not even on the list. So this plan will require significant investment and active oversight by management of GVB and all of us here today, with SMART goals to be established, as well as a unified effort from the entire community of our island. So I'm glad to hear the Gov said, there's no hurt in asking. The worst they'll say is no, but we don't want to hear no, right? We want to hear, you got it. So jumping right in, part one, airline incentives. Some of this is already happening, but the airline incentives are a critical pillar of the plan, especially for our Korea market. Quite simply, as we've heard several times already, we need more flights from Korea. And most people don't realize there's a global aircraft shortage, which makes it even harder to attract flights. In addition, the reduced number of arrivals, together with inflation and a strong dollar, makes the cost per person for landing fees, very high compared to our competitors. For example, talking in yen, our cost went from 1,978 yen to 4,660 yen for landing fees. Additionally, airlines can fly 4 times a day between Seoul and Tokyo with one plane. That same plane can do one trip to Guam. So many of these airline incentives only kick in if the flights are below certain minimum revenue levels, and the return of investment on airline incentives is over 100%. As you can see in the yellow box up here, a 166-seat aircraft at 70% load factor costs $5,000, but generates almost $200,000 in economic impact and over $20,000 in taxes per flight, which on an annual basis is $1.8 million in cost to generate $19 million in Guam revenues and $60 million in economic impact and over $6 million in taxes. This is based on the latest spend per tourism that we have and just all the other economics. And I checked it and the math's out. So airline incentives is a big piece of this plan. I think this is one of the top priorities we need to be focusing on. Marketing. The marketing initiatives include several campaigns, but these are just simply campaigns and these are ideas. The most important thing to walk away when it comes to marketing is we must undertake bold new ideas, fresh approaches, get creative, and not have oh, that won't work because we tried that before, or that won't work because this. We need to have a can-do, not a can't-do attitude when it comes to marketing. It's just so crazy, just might work attitude, right? So we propose to engage a marketing expert to help craft new approaches. And we also need source market feedback, and we'll focus on one of the focus is to target Okinawa's 10 million visitors. If we can pull just 4% of Okinawa visitors, we will reattain our 2019 arrivals. Our focus will be on Guam's unique selling points, promoting our diverse and unique experiences and culture, featuring our unique tomorrow culture, and promoting our position as America in Asia, something I think we have not failed to do in any strong way since at least before COVID. The top USP is to promote our diverse and unique tourist attractions, and rebranding them or renaming them from option tours just to tour experiences or traveler experiences, as that option tours dates us as well, as that's a term that hasn't been used since the 90s. In addition to promoting our attractions, we want to do campaigns of value-added promotions. Examples include stay 4 nights, get a 5th night free, or free seat upgrades, or free upgrades to certain experiences. And the idea behind this is to promote elements that provide value, but without providing discounts or cheapening the experience. And that helps operators because it should not impact income to the operators too much. We believe we can achieve tens of millions of dollars in value by doing this, plus holding a grand sweepstakes for even greater prizes. Another proposed strategy is targeting the niche of higher spending visitors who may be less sensitive to the weak yen. This may be most effective as a featured 4-day event that we're thinking of hosting. The idea is not to try that all of Guam is premium, but rather to show that you can come to Guam, stay in a nice high-end suite at Dusit or Tsubaki, and see some of the Guam's best experience and have a true first-class experience. We're also planning some events, big events, new major events, including an EDM water bomb event, like a water festival, a summer family treasure hunt, international barbecue competitions, and a major Christmas lighting festival. The idea here is to have these major events, at least one per quarter, because events help to build the Guam brand, infill slow seasons, and also create a lot of much needed social media exposure and buzz. Part 3, destination improvement. Destination development has what the previous term has been used to mean all destination improvements. We propose we separate this out into 3. Destination development be the term used for major government investments such as infrastructure on roads and things the government takes care of, sidewalks, roads, beach cleaning, all those things. Destination maintenance and operation to be more the ongoing maintenance things such as grass cutting and curb painting. And then product improvement be the term used for all private sector improvements. So here's just a list of destination maintenance, things that are covered on that destination maintenance. And some of these are already part of the GV budget and not part of this recovery plan. But I want to point out that it's important for GVB, DPW, and Parks and Rec to meet and discuss their respective roles and responsibilities going forward so there's a clear path with appropriate funding for active maintenance and really understanding who's in charge and who's responsible for what. Destination development historically and normally includes major initiatives typically funded by hot bonds or their long-term financing vessels. However, there are immediate needs needed to bring Guam back to decent standards. Some of these are listed here, and we estimate these to total 12 to 13 million. Some of this isn't needed in Tumon, but much of this is also expected to be needed in the villages and island-wide for repair of public toilets, frequented by visitors, repairing and improvement of different sightseeing spots all throughout the island, as well as removal of junk cars and kind of these dump sites that are really blights on the experience. There are also improvements that have been suggested by the airport. I would like to thank the airport staff, management, and I'm sure some of the board as well for sharing their input. For the recovery plan, these are all low-cost, high-impact improvements that focus primarily on improving the arrivals experience, that first impression that tourists and our visitors get when they get to Guam. I'm not going to get into too much detail here because I think Ricky's going to cover this in his presentation. The plan also includes major beautification efforts as a primary use of enhancing the destination. Some of these are easy kills, some of these require a lot more funding and coordination. Product improvement for the private sector includes ideas such as incentives to water blast, paint, and just keep your property looking fresh and clean, possibly including zero interest or low interest loans and potentially even grants or forgivable loans or match for grants. There's also an idea of establishing standards and mechanisms for intra-industry feedback for improvement. So my restaurant staff will eat at your restaurant. My hotel staff will stay at your hotel and vice versa and kind of critique and grade each other. There's discussions of potentially floating a new hot bond in 2025. This must be used for desperately needed major upgrades separate from the budget of this recovery plan. So you see the must-do. There's assumed a major upgrade in Tumon because there's not been any major investment in Tumon's infrastructure for over 3 decades. And unless we start doing that and bring Tumon back up to where it needs to be, we will not be able to achieve our long-term goals. So now comes the economics and budgets, and this is the part I'm happy Gov has pledged her support. I'm glad the senators are here because, as I've heard, you guys control the purse strings, so it's time to open up those purse strings. In all seriousness, this is a budget, and it's not going to be cheap. This is kind of a wish list of things. If we're given a blank check and we could go to town and do what we needed to do, this is what it would cost. The preliminary budget proposed is $35 million in year 1 and $24 million in year 2 for a total of $59 million over the 2 years. I just want to let you know this is in addition to the budget already given to GVB for fiscal year 2025. And that achieving the plan, if we get all this and we're able to be successful on the airline incentives, on the marketing events we're trying to do, the ROI on this investment, and I want to refer to it as an investment and not an expense, will be 100%, over 100%. For some of this funding, we've already identified $14 million to possibly be utilized from the Matapang flood remediation project that will later be refunded by the hot bond. And there's at least $2 to $3 million that we've worked with management in identifying in the existing GV budget. So the ask then is about $18 million that we're short. from the legislature, and some of this too could come from private investment, right? Because product improvement in year one is 11.5 million. That doesn't all have to be government funding. We have to work together and figure out ways to get this done. But keep in mind that more of half of this will be used for island-wide beautification that will benefit our visitors and residents alike. For year two, we may have 7 million excess TAF from 2024, assuming the United Taiwan flights meet their minimum thresholds. We will also be respectfully requesting that any remaining TAF beyond GV operations be dedicated to recovery efforts rather than other line agency needs. And I just want to say at the end here, this is a preliminary budget and is subject to change as we further develop the plan. Just real quick economics, increasing our market share from 1.3 to 1.8% will bring 800,000 arrivals in 2025, up from 600,000. This is an increase of 230,000 visitors, yielding an increase in taxes of $60 million based on all the economic activity that's drummed up by the Delta. By 2027, assuming we continue on that trend, the difference between no intervention and intervening and doing some of these or all of these initiatives in the plan will yield $2 billion in additional economic impact and over $200 million in new taxes. That'll get us back on track to where we need to be. Next steps for the plan. We've been meeting, we presented this to the board at the last board meeting. So now next steps to develop SMART goals for management team to follow. These are the tactical steps that we need to take to get some of these things going. Engaging a marketing advisor. We continue to hold working group sessions to seek additional input from industry leaders and members such as you guys. And most importantly, the biggest thing is identifying the funding resources to meet these needs. So that concludes the overview of the proposed plans, the tactics, and our immediate path forward, focused on destination improvements, increased airlift, and targeted marketing for our audience, right? The entire report spans over 80 pages, and it is now available on the GVB website for you guys to go and download and read electronically, so you're not killing all those trees. But it is big. It is a long plan. There's a lot of data in there. There's a lot of graphs, a lot of information, and a lot more detail than what I gave you today. Today was just a high-level overview, so I encourage all of you to go to the GV website and download the plan and read it for yourselves. I also want to just iterate that this is the first version of the plan. This is now complete, this first version. We look forward to beginning the implementation with management and with the whole community, and to refining the plan over the coming weeks. Chairman George stated in our board meeting that this plan is fluid. It's not a set it and forget it plan. It's going to change as things change, as our markets change, as the industry changes. So we need to be quick to move, quick to act. And I think that's been one of our biggest issues, is the quickness to which we've responded and we've been reactive. We need to be proactive, and a lot of these things will cover that. So we continue to work with a variety of working groups led by our GV management, staff, and the entire team. And of course, as we all know, achieving our goals will require unity, commitment, and most importantly, investment from our public, private stakeholders, and everybody who wants to see tourism get back to its days of, its heydays. But I'm confident, and I believe most on our I'm going to say most. I'm going to say all. Everyone in our recovery team is confident that together we can begin to turn things around. We need to turn things around. It's not an option. It's not an if. It's now, right? We need to take, and it'll take all of us, efforts from all of us, money from all of us, ideas from all of us, together working as one team. And I think that's what makes our community as strong as it is. We all come together in times of crisis and adversity. So this is just another one of those times, and I'm looking at everyone nodding and agreeing. So let's do it. We continue to work on this plan. If any of you are interested in joining focus groups or working groups, you can reach out to me. My information isn't there, but I'll share it. And you actually can reach out through GVB. Nadine and Lisa have been working with us very closely. Jerry as well. Or you can also reach out. Everyone knows Mark. Mark is kind of the guy keeping everyone on track and keeping everything going. So please, if you have any ideas or you want to get more involved, reach out to any of us. We're not hard to find, and we're very quick to respond most of the time. But yeah, we need your ideas, we need your input, we need your help. So thank you. Is there time for any Q&A, or is that later? Later. Okay, Q&A later. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Hafide, good morning, everyone. All right, can I get a hands raised from our guests, or from the Japan Guam Travel Association? Yes? All right. どうぞよろしくお願いします。Guam Economic Development Authority という政府に参りました。日本語を勉強しました。ニューヨーク大学で日本語を勉強しましたが、今たくさん言葉が忘れてしまいました。それから英語で話してもいいですか? All right. Basically, since the last time I spoke with you, which I believe was October of 2022, of course, we doled out LEAP 2 under Public Law 3715, as well as ARP. 18.3 million, 334 applications, 165 went to businesses with less than 5 employees, and 169 went to businesses of 5 or more employees. As you can see, the lion's share of this program went to the larger businesses, the 169 or so. And I can say that this exclusively went to the tourism sector. When we look at our economic indicators, what do we expect? We do expect with the change in administration, interest rates are expected to be cut another 1 or 2 times. And then after that, possible inflation. There's some fears about inflation because of possible tariffs introduced by the Trump administration. Therefore, that might lead to inflation. And when there's widespread inflation, of course, the way the Fed deals with that is they raise the interest rate. So we see the cost of money as being particularly it's not going to get any cheaper to borrow. Right? And so that's the kind of the key takeaway from there that we need to address at GHRA. Oil prices will probably be lower than they were at their high when we had all the supply chain crises. Nevertheless, it won't be as low as it was pre-pandemic, at the height of the pandemic. And of course, we have the exchange rate. The exchange rate will continue to do what it was. I'm not the expert on that. Building permits, we saw a peak in building permits of 2023, much of which we believe to be kind of some pent-up demand in pandemic projects. And, finally, we got our labor sorted out. Finally, we got our financing sorted out. So here we're going. But we see that starting to slow down, probably as a result of the cost of money. But the slide I really wanted to dial in on here is what's going on sector employment-wise. From 2019 to 2024, we see a 22% rise in agriculture and a 78% rise in the construction workforce, whereas in retail, trade, and services, the yellow. So retail trade, tourism retail, for example, services, a decline of 14%, and just in the last year, it started to pick back up after the low of COVID. But then it's almost as if businesses during COVID that were heavily affected by the pandemic, our tourism-related businesses, had to do many layoffs and furloughs, right? Then we started to call people back, but then the business didn't come back just as quickly as we want. So then we started to kind of slow down on hiring again. So this is really kind of a telling story. So some of the ongoing recovery efforts, GHRA has the Guam Recovery Loan Program. We have $25,000 to $1.2 million available. You have to provide 1 letter of declination from a local bank. So you basically just call Ed Antalan or somebody and just be like, hey man, just say no, and then I can go to GHRA. Or Mark Tokito, whomever, okay, or Kin Cook. And then all transactions over 100,000 must be approved by the board. It is subject to the standard underwriting process. So of course we look at, collateral, cash flow, character, all the C's. And there is a 2% closing. However, we can discount this for all of our friends in tourism. And we are also able to defer principal payments. And actually one thing that I've been talking to my board chair about, who's hiding in the back. Hi, Chairman David John. So we've been chatting about possibly instead of deferment, rather an interest-only option for 1 year to 18 months, and then picking up with the regular loan schedule or even a balloon payment. All of those things are possible. Longer-term loans are possible. It doesn't have to be, you're not locked into 5 years. We could probably stretch it out to 10, even 15. Our SSBCI lending program, we work with partner banks to guarantee your loans, and these are all subject to our partner bank guidelines. Another program that we rolled out this year is a collateral support program. So if you find that your collateral, you're trying to borrow money, but maybe your collateral is insufficient, you can look at our collateral support guarantee program. The really exciting one that we've been really pushing is our Destino Guahan Venture Capital Program. This is a new program. We're still trying to find our sea legs on this, but we have 2 transactions right now in the pipeline that we're hoping to get money out on the street by probably January of next year. This is a venture capital program, which means the government is a shareholder in your business. That doesn't mean I'm going to show up and be like, hey, what's up? Can I get my free hotel room now since I'm a shareholder? That's not what it means. But what it does mean is you're subject to regular audit requirements. It's unlike a loan where you need to pay it back right away. Our venture capital program, we're a shareholder, so we hang out with you through as your business expands, as your business contracts. There's a 10-year buyout plan requirement, meaning you must take out the government of your business. You must purchase, buy us out within 10 years. And our preferred industries remain the industries that Governor Leon Guerrero and the administration are committed to, including industries that support food security like agriculture, aquaculture, industries that help, bring higher technology, higher skilled jobs to Guam, as well as our existing tourism industry, of course. It's a real exciting one. I mean, I have to say, Destino Guahan is the one we talk about a lot. We don't get a lot of action because sometimes it's hard for people to come up with the 50%, the one-to-one match on it. But it really is a good program, I think, if we can get more support around this program. Hot Bond 2.0. So this is what Kin had alluded to earlier. We're looking at 60 to 80 million. This is a good one for our senators and incoming senators. Congratulations. We're looking at 1 to 2 tranches, maybe a year and a half to 2 years apart. So a legislative authorization to allow for 2 issuances of 40 million, maybe 30 to 40 million each. And we anticipate a 3-month timeline from legislative adoption to getting money out there. And the indicative rates we're getting is about 5.7%, and it's a blend of taxable and tax exempt. What that means is that most government of Guam, when we go out for a bond, a municipal bond, government of Guam bond money, investors buy our bonds and they receive interest and they don't have to pay taxes on it. It's triple tax exempt. No state, no federal, no local. It's great for people in places like California, right? Those can only be used for capital projects. When you're looking at something like the airline incentives, you can use you can use the bond for that, but it might not be subject to triple tax. It might be single tax exempt or double tax exempt. So just a distinction. What happens is if it's not triple tax exempt, it drives the interest rate a little bit higher by like 30, 40 basis points. So instead of 5.7, it would be like 5.3. So what we generally try to do is we try to concentrate the CIP, the capital projects, in the bond, and then shift the payment for like things like airline incentives into other pots of money, other appropriations. That would be a better, to me, I can either give you money, special appropriation, or I can authorize a hot bond. What am I issuing for what? I authorize a hot bond for construction. I authorize this other money for incentives. That's just food for thought for you. 2 years ago, I think I said something, this is a cut and paste of 2 years ago right here. I just wanted to reflect on that. We didn't know if LEAP at the time, or LEAP 2, would be relevant to solving the economic challenges that our island is facing. I don't think it did. We're still here. We're still experiencing difficulty. Nevertheless, I believe it helped to smooth the way for a number of businesses, 300 or so businesses to be specific. We, of course, encourage stakeholders to continue coming together to talk about programming that has to do with getting more capital out there. What we did find through all of our LEAP programs is payroll is one big challenge, but other challenges include just the cost of daily running of business. And one thing that I did notice, of course, was we needed that we said 2 years ago was we need a long-term employment strategy. We still don't have that. What we think in the future is tourism is going to continue to face headwinds from the global economy. Federal spending has insulated the impact of tourism on government. Federal spending has insulated the impact, meaning No, we're not in like Guam is not in a state of depression. Why? Because federal spending is insulating that. Nevertheless, tourism, this is a great time for us to focus on rebuilding because we have a little bit more of a safety net with the federal government support. Estimated number of businesses, we estimate that there still remain about 300 businesses in recovery mode. So, some things we can discuss in the future. As far as human capital, every business in here should be somehow participating in the Guam Registered Apprenticeship Program. And if you're not, then Governor Leon Guerrero can call Dave Della Sola to come visit you and help you out and hook you up with that. In addition, we should look at our tourism workforce development programs at GCC and the University of Guam, because we really should be trying to continue to feed people that can onboard in tourism quickly and rise through the ranks quickly. What we found was when I was looking at those labor numbers, when you see people when you see a sector migration from one sector to another, you start to say, okay, maybe what's the number one reason why people leave their jobs? No, it's having a pain in the butt boss. No, yes, usually it's pay, right? The number one reason why people leave is for higher pay. Across a lot of job categories that we found, we have in hospitality, we have sous chefs and head chefs whose pay has risen by over 35% in the last 4 or 5 years since pre-COVID. Whereas we have housekeepers, maintenance, landscapers whose pay has risen by 18%. But across the island, the average pay of our employees has raised over it's like right around the 25-30% range. So if everyone else is raising their pay to attract your employees, then it becomes a situation where you're training and then they're leaving, you're training and leaving. But if you get them early enough, right, if we get them straight out of high school from some specialized program, we don't have to spend as much money training. And then when they get in, they can promote quickly out of that absolute minimum wage, right? Private capital. Right now, we are at GHRA looking at the USDA Intermediary Relending Program, which is a 1% loan program that we'd like to go ahead and develop towards a program here. But I'd also like our senators to contemplate any tax credits or even tax extensions that have to do with the taxes that this industry pays. No, you cannot remove HOT for the next 2 years, okay? You're gonna get a call from me and I'm gonna come down to the legislature and say, no, man, we got some bonds we're about to issue, okay? However, we all pay, do you guys use your credit card when you pay your BPT? Of course, right? If we could maybe push some of that out, to improve our cash flow in the near term. I'm not saying don't pay BPT, you must pay BPT, but maybe kind of defer it another couple months, just make sure you pay it. These are the sorts of things that we're exploring as far as taxes are concerned, or even, let's say, you wanted to improve the state of, Mr. Perez talked about the pink building on Fujita Beach Road that everybody, what if we had some businesses who said, I want to do that, and the purpose is I want to create this as a tourism destination. That could possibly be something that you look at as authorizing a blanketed, like a tax credit program of $2 million for this type of improvement in the village of Tumon, that type of thing. Yeah, what do you think? Primo? Senator Frank Blas is giving me a showing promise signal. And then public assets, of course, hot bond, and I don't think I need to speak to that at length, but any other, PPPs, we like those. I mean, rather, David John likes those. I'm okay. I'm neither here nor there. Anyway, let's see. And then back to this workforce development. This is just some food for thought as to how to approach all of these challenges. If we surveyed hospitality sector employees over the last 8 years and the reason why they leave, and we look at wages relative to in the industry island-wide, and exactly as I shared, we make sure every single one of you are effectively using GRAP. We make sure every single one of you is onboarding at, where you're onboarding employees that are already trained, right? And are there government-supported programs getting people into managerial tracks faster? The Ben Fergusons, the Sophias, Chews of the world, they shouldn't be the exception. All of our local kids should be headed towards being CEOs, and all of Tumon should be run by locals. We shouldn't be flying in. We have enough supply here, right? And a lot of times I think if we start to promote them early enough, then the propensity to stay in tourism versus migrate to the federal government or any other industry will be higher. And of course, we can continue to support entrepreneur and self-employment programs through programs like GUMA and all of our small business programs. So that's all I got. Thank you. Hasidusmasi. Domo arigatou gozaimasu.
Oh my God. It's always hard having to follow in Mel's footsteps because she brings a lot of energy. Something I need to, I think, work on. But thank you, Hafide. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ricky Hernandez, Deputy Executive Manager at the airport. I want to thank GHRA, GTTA, JGTA, KGTA for inviting the GIAA to this forum. I think as a partner to the entire industry, and I noticed in Kin's slide we were considered secondary. I hope that's not related to the funding, but I appreciate the opportunity to be able to present on some of the things that the airport has been doing and what we plan to do in the future, especially with some of the help from many individuals in this audience. And before I begin, I just wanted to kind of mention, the airport is an operation, obviously 24/7. Our priority is safety and security. And I think in terms of what we've been trying to do with all the FAA, TSA, US CBP regulations that have come down the line since COVID, we've been trying to be proactive to ensure that the passenger experience doesn't get impacted too much. And I'll be talking about that a little bit. But I wanted to just mention, I know that we've talked about a lot of the issues and the problems that we've been facing. I think Jerry, Kin, and Mel have talked about a lot of the problems, and this slide is just one example of the recovery that we've seen, although we've seen increases year over year since 2021. These numbers are in-plane passenger activity. The airport looks at enplanements, which are departures, which includes locals, which includes transits. And so in our peak, we were at about almost 1.9 million in-plane passengers. And the airport is supposed to be self-sustaining. And so the way we operate is to generate aeronautical revenues, and we generate non-aeronautical revenues. And that's how we are able to run the airport 24/7 within all of the federal regulations that are required. But we noticed that, obviously we're at 55% of pre-COVID levels, just over 1 million in-plane passengers that we were able to break this year with our partners, the airlines, and all of the other industry stakeholders that were able to make this happen. The red line here you see is just the GVB arrivals, so it does trend in the same manner as our in-plane passenger activity. And so we've seen some of our transit passengers, which is the blue, recover a little bit faster, of course. And we've kind of already talked about a lot with GVB as to the reasons and the data. So I won't get into that a little bit more anymore. But I do want to say that we understand the struggle of the industry because we are in the industry. We operate in this industry. And so when you see less passengers and that affects your businesses, that affects the airport as well. And so we aren't where we were in 2019. We've lost over 150 million in revenues, and we still continue to operate 24/7 as that's required for our operating certificate. And with that, what have we been doing? Again, providing a safe and secure travel experience. Really, the goal that we try to accomplish every day at the airport is to ensure that we follow all these regulations, but also to ensure that we stand ready to receive all of the increased traffic volume, right? If the airport is a choke point for progress, we want to make sure that we head that off. And so we stand ready for pre-pandemic travel volume. But what have we done in terms of the passenger experience and the passenger processing experience? And so there's a number of things that maybe not many realize are some increases in our upgrades. But pre-pandemic, the security screening line at TSA was always down the stairs, right? And so when I say we're ready for pre-pandemic, we've done this since COVID. We've increased the screening capacity, multiple lanes at TSA, and we've also worked with TSA to get those upgrades of the screening equipment. And so when we do get to that point, we're not a choke point there at the airport in terms of passenger screening, because waiting in line, the safety issues, having lines go down the stairway, potentially safety issues going down the escalator we notice were issues. We're the first in the region to implement what is called biometric exit. Not many understand what that is. CBP is requiring screening at the gate before you enter the plane at international departures. So we were proactive. That would have been a major choke point that may have caused delays, but we work with our airline partners, with our technology partners to incorporate biometric exit. And so you don't have to have an immigration officer there at every gate checking your passport before you get on the plane and taking that away from the arrivals immigration hall. We were able to get that installed. We work with our current concessions, right? We have some limitations I may talk about later, but we work with our current concessions with short-term extensions that were authorized by the legislature. And you may have seen some improvements to food and beverage. Our specialty retail concessionaire has upgraded Gucci, over a $2 million investment, because that is one of the vendors that generate a lot of revenue for our specialty retail, which in turn, of course, helps us. And so the longer the extension, the higher the investment. We have airport ambassadors, of course. These are the ones that help at arrivals in the immigration hall, bilingual, multilingual individuals that help with filling out forms. But what we're looking at and excited about is that CBP has also been working to digitize their Guam CNMI visa waiver process. And so recently, they've been working with the industry to ensure that everyone that is coming in from an international destination that is using the Guam CNMI visa waiver does that online. And so that will help with that issue that has been identified with the filling out of forms in that immigration hall. And of course, GVB and Customs and Quarantine has digitized the customs declaration forms. And then we've completed numerous projects, including the International Arrivals Corridor. I understand that when people come in internationally, it looks great. It's a brand new building. I know it's a bit of a walk. We could have put a little bit more conveyance systems in there. One moving walk is $1 million, so there had to be some cost cutting there. But we look forward to continuing to improve that area. But we know that after you get out of the International Arrivals Corridor, we've been working tirelessly to try to improve that process as well. And I might be talking about that in a little bit. The one thing I think has also been mentioned, but we've been pretty proactive with this, is air service development. The airport operates under FAA assurances, regulations, and so being able to dole out discounts to any airline that we please is not something that we can do. We cannot treat the similarly situated airlines differently. And so with that, what we can do is if there are new airlines or new routes that existing airlines are going to be operating to underserved or unserved destinations, then we can provide some level of air service development incentive. Those could be up to, I think, for new carriers or new routes that current carriers are operating, we can give up to a 50% discount on the operational fees. And those are for short haul flights. For long haul flights, which typically are for really actually unserved populations, including the West Coast US, Malaysia, and so forth, we could provide up to 100% discount on operational rates. And so those are some things that we were able to proactively utilize the FAA's expanded definition of air service development. And so we were able to take advantage of that with our board of directors. And then we've continued to pursue working with GVB on new and increased air service through discussions with airline planners. We attend Routes Asia and Routes World if they're in a reasonable location, and talk to airline planners. We tell them our capabilities at the airport. What can we do? How many gates we have? All of the technical aspects that an airline would need to know, in addition to GVB telling them this is how many people can fill the plane. And so those are the types of things that we have been working on and we continue to work on at the airport. The thing that everyone asks us about, of course, is the terminal flooring. And so we have finally awarded the contract and then the notice to proceed. We worked through the what everyone understands as a cumbersome process with the procurement process, but we're able to get through that. We're looking at replacing and repairing 106,000 square feet of flooring. And of that, 70,000 square feet of that is in the immigration and the customs baggage claim hall. And here's some renderings that we have up here of how the customs area is going to look like. In the immigration hall, of course, as well, we're looking at another design that kind of symbolizes kind of everyone's entry into Guam with some blues into green, or into beige and then into green, as if you're coming in from the sea. And so we're working on this. We should see some progress, visible progress for those that are flying over the next couple months, very soon. You'll start seeing some hoarding walls up and so forth. But terrazzo is a specialty, and we have been working with our contractor for this $3.3 million project. In addition to that, terminal painting is a big project that we're looking at. That's going to help with the experience. You might not think that might help with the experience, but everything from every vertical surface that you see is going to be repainted. So that includes the arrivals and the departures curbside. And then the arrivals refresh, we're looking at, we're understanding the different passenger profiles that have been coming in, and Jerry's mentioned a lot about some of the changing dynamics of these passenger profiles. And so as we think about that at the airport, we look to see where are all of our passengers going, right? And we're seeing an increase in rideshare, a decrease in tour bus pickups. And so we don't know if this is necessarily a long-term change, but we're strategically thinking about when people come in, where do they go? And what do we need to do to ensure that we have the capacity to be able to offer these opportunities or these options for ground transportation? And then, of course, we're cognizant of the cosmetic improvements that we could make. And so we continue to work with all of our privatized operators, custodial, and so forth, and for all of those improvements. And what we plan and what we want to do. At the airport, like I said, we're supposed to be self-sustaining, self-sufficient. And so we need to diversify our revenues, right? Aeronautical revenues are our bread and butter. But the more non-aeronautical revenues that we could generate will help to not only increase our self-sufficiency, but also to potentially reduce airline rates and charges. And so the two things that we're looking at, and some of these are more immediate, that could happen just as soon as this fiscal year into next calendar year. Enhancing and adding concession services. We understand that concession services, and we're appreciative of the current concession offers that we have, but we understand that improving and adding and enhancing those are important. And it's not something that we just sit on our hands on and say, oh, we don't need to do that. But I think in terms of what we need is, and in the next slide I'll talk about it a little bit more, is some legislative authorization. And we've been working with the 37th Guam legislature to do this, but we're going to be continuing to work with the 38th Guam legislature to be able to amend some of the laws that have been holding us back in terms of adding concession services. And these include retail, food and beverage, adding rent-a-cars, because we do have 2 vacant booths that we can't fill, advertising, parking, currency exchange, and then I know the governor mentioned Shinhan, passenger lounges. Shinhan Coward has expressed interest, but until we make some changes into the law that will allow us to solicit for these services, we're stuck with what we have. And then securing long-term leases is more of a medium long-term issue. I think the governor had mentioned about potentially expanding the years that a company could lease public properties to be able to make up their investment. And so if we were able to adjust the law to allow for this, we could look at P3s, public-private partnerships. We're looking at cargo facilities. We can't build it ourselves, right? We're looking to continue to pursue federal funds for capital projects, right? But we can't borrow because I don't think anyone would lend us more money until we see improvement in the industry. But we want to, we're looking at cargo facilities, parking garage as P3s, MRO facilities, which is an entirely new industry, and distribution centers, just to name a few. Some of the things that we're looking at using federal funds for, we understand our conveyance systems are almost as old as me. And so these conveyance systems, escalators, elevators need to be upgraded. And we're looking at utilizing federal funds for that. Increasing security screening area. So now that we've opened the lanes, we're looking at the queuing issue on the back end. And so we're looking to expand that area. Just some of these passenger-related experience. Replacing passenger loading bridges is a big issue. That's about 1 to 1.2 million per passenger loading bridge. So we're looking at federal funds for that to repair some of the Typhoon Mawar damaged bridges. Construct cargo apron is something that we're looking at as well to expand the cargo opportunities that we have. DPW is expanding the road in front of the airport, Route 10A, and so much more. There's so many other projects that we're looking at. A lot of the things I put up here are some of the more, I guess if you can consider those sexy, but a lot of the other ones that we're looking at are safety and security related upgrades that may not be as interesting. And so what do we need? We need everyone's support, right? At the airport, if passengers, tourists can't get here because of issues that we might have, because of financial roadblocks, we need support, right? That we wouldn't be able to meet the capacity needs of the industry. And so the airport needs to update Guam law. We need to be granted authority to promulgate rules and regulations for the solicitation, selection, and award of concession agreements so that we can offer better services for our passengers, both outside on the land side, which is outside screening, and as well as inside. And then we also are requesting to lease airport properties for up to a 30-year period. And the thing with these is that there has been interest. Vietnam Air has been mentioned before, $280 million. They were requesting to build MRO facility, and then maintenance, repair, and overhaul facility is a new industry on Guam. It brings in a lot of jobs, high-paying jobs, and it helps to solidify an airline's commitment to the airport because it's a 30-year lease and they're going to be building it. But we're not looking at frivolous spending, right? We're looking at to ensure that there are companies that have a plan that makes sense for the airport, that it's compatible with what we plan to do with the airport over the next 5, 10, 20 years. And so we're not going to just let anyone in the door that says, hey, we want to put money into the airport. We want to look at their finances. We want to look at their plan to make sure it matches with what we want to do. And so we need your support. And we're looking forward to working with the next legislature. But as an industry, this helps to support the airport by diversifying our non-aeronautical revenues. And with that, I was only given 5 to 10 minutes. So we could talk about a lot more. This is not everything the airport has been doing. This is just 5 to 10 minutes of what we've been doing. But we appreciate your time and the opportunity to be able to present. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. We'd like to just kind of press forward. We're going to skip break since obviously we're an hour over, and we want to make sure that we get to our panelists for the Q&A session. We're going to have to thank everybody up here for now. Some of you will be returning. Give them a huge round of applause. We appreciate all of the updates from the recovery plan to the survey, as well as, of course, Gita and with airport, because it's really important on how can we help support the businesses, drive the business decisions so that everybody can remain in business and continue to help grow our industry. And of course, especially with our airport partners, how do we continue to improve and upgrade, which is what we're asking everybody to do. It's not just government, but also private sector. Speaking of that, our next panel, panel 2 is actually our private sector partners. And so if we could please have the next set of speakers come up to the podium, or I'm sorry, to the panel table. We have Mr. Sam Shinohara from United Airlines. We have Ken Kiriyama from United Airlines. Ken Yanagisawa, who's a GVB and GHRA board member and president for PHR, Ken Corporation. We have, of course, Mr. David Tydinko, who is with GTTA and president and CEO of Valley of the Lati, and then Mr. Mark Baldiga, who is president and CEO of Baldiga Group. I'm trying to look for your if you guys can. Hold on, Dave. We would like for you guys to try to keep your answers concise. Oh, I don't know why it says Dan Tydinko. You want to write on it?
Right. You spelled the last name right.
I know. I didn't do it. Sorry about that. Dave, they thought you're from GTA here, Mr. Dan Tydinko. Yes, so we'd like to welcome everybody, and helping me, co-moderating with me right now is, of course, Mr. Jay Miller. So thank you so much, Ken Kiriyama-san. Thank you. we'll go ahead and get started. And again, try to keep your answers concise. Some of the information was presented, whether it's Kin's great presentation. Actually, a lot of the answers came from the governor's welcome address as well, and even Mel's presentation. So thank you again for everybody for being here.
Everyone, thank you. Is this on? Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We just heard from the government, and we heard what their great plans were. But we all know it's not the government that drives tourism. What drives tourism is the private sector. So it's extremely important that we take a little bit of time and understand what the initial reaction is from various private sector industry leaders to what this plan means. Do they believe in it? Do they think it's going to go forward? So to start with, we have a series of questions having to do with airline incentives. And so the first question goes to you, Mark. Now, the plan calls for airline incentives. Now, a lot of people think that maybe we shouldn't pay airlines to fly here. Instead, we should be investing in the product. Can you explain your thoughts regarding and explain the thoughts behind airline incentives from your perspective?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it really short. Actually, the governor already answered the question, then Kin re-answered the question. But in a nutshell, we did a lot of research to put the plan together. One of the people I spoke to is Adam Sachs. He's the president and CEO of Tourism Economics. It's the world's leading economist in the tourism space. Basically, he explained to me there's a global aircraft shortage right now. It's going to last another 2 to 3 years. And he said, Mark, I'll put it to you this way. If you're not incenting the airlines, you're not getting seats. That's not just Guam. That's globally. There's just an aircraft shortage. And as Kin mentioned, you can take one aircraft flight at Seoul to Tokyo 4 times with a nice weekend to enjoy, or you can come to Guam once. He put it to me this way. He said, if you're an airline, you're flying 85% load factor, that the Korean LCCs are, your rates are going to be high because people are just, there's limited supply. So you've got one aircraft at 85% load factor, you're making money. You ask them to add a second flight, even if the arrivals increase 33%, all you did was create 2 flights at 65% load factor and you're losing money and you're lowering the rate. He said, so this is the reason you need the incentives. The airlines are very picky about where they put aircraft right now. There are several different kinds of incentives. MRGs, minimum revenue guarantees, are common for new routes. That's what's happening with United in Taiwan. You go to the airline and you say, add a flight to Taiwan. They say, you add a flight. So basically the bottom line is if the airline hits their minimum thresholds, 70% load factor, for example, where they're not losing money, then it costs the destination zero. That's what we did for Beijing, for Dynamic Air and United in Shanghai a decade ago. Cost us nothing. They hit the targets, cost us nothing. But the backstop is there, the guarantee is there. So that's the reason for the airline incentives is because there's a global aircraft shortage. It's not that Guam is the miserable destination that has to pay the airlines to come. Understand every destination in the world is struggling to try to get airlift. So it's a global situation. It's not Guam only. We do have to put money into the destination. We do have to market differently. And we do have to support the airlines. All three are needed.
Thank you, Mark. Mary?
Ken-san, over the last 4 years, I know a lot of our flights that have been coming into Guam, the airlift capacity, with the exception of United Airlines, most of them have been charters. And some people may not know that PHR actually has been directly involved with building relationships and getting charters, airlines to Guam, especially from Korea. I understand that you were actively involved in early discussions with Korean LCCs. Can you give us your thoughts about how the charters make a difference and the need for airline incentives?
As Mark said, basically the shortage of the airplane exists, and actually the Guam is losing against Southeast Asia. As you know, Mary said, 2018 we started flying from Narita to here from Jeju Air. Unfortunately, they lost their competition. We couldn't organize the charter anymore from Japan. In that regard, actually, how the support extended by the Southeast Asia versus Guam is the matter, to be honest with you. As a demand orientation, where it's lacking from Japan, or shortage of the airplane, how from there to bring back to Guam. Actually, the outbound from Korea is already recovering, as you saw already, a slide from Mr. Kim. And actually 28 million outbound already existed. Airplanes are there. How to grab it? That's what it is.
Sam, you're the key airline in the region. This is your home. Can you explain to us why airline incentives are important to United?
I'm glad I wasn't the first person to answer this question. I appreciate it tremendously that it went to Mark first, but I think he covered the answer. On the United Airlines side, I think about it in a couple of different ways. Number one, new market, right? And, God, it sure is great when you can share risk with a partner, right? And that's exactly what we're doing with respect to our new flight between Guam and Taiwan. And so, that gives us the ability to have some confidence that we're not just going to lose our tails doing that. As we said, airplane time is very, very precious, right? And so you try to figure out how to make things work. That's a great way to do it. The other is in struggling markets where you just don't have the load factor necessary to make the flights work, right? If we can incentivize a carrier to continue service into a market that is struggling, that's a great way for destinations to spend some resources. And then I think the other challenge is that we have a lot of peaks and valleys with respect to visitation to the island, right? And so, but it is very important to have a consistent schedule in the market, right? It doesn't help destination management offices to say, oh, we only have service, these 3 months of the year. And so, if you can help subsidize or incentivize carriers to stay in the markets during the peak, during the valleys. I think it's a great way to think about spending resources.
With that said, though, Sam, we've seen Guam stay a hub with United, and I think it's been really important for our region to continue to see United commit to Guam, especially with the history it's had with continental Micronesia. But due to the slow recovery, we've seen all airlines reduce service routes and aircraft. So what are your near-term plans for 2025 and 26 for routes and equipment to make sure that they stay at least on Guam or within our region to continue to help keep our airlift recovery? And how important is that to our recovery plan?
Super important, Mary. Thank you for the question. I don't speak as fast as Mark, but I'll speak super fast so I can say quite a bit. So number one, a little bit of a brag for United Airlines. We were the first carrier to restore service between Guam and the rest of the world. And quite frankly, very proud of the fact that we maintained service between Guam and Honolulu and Guam and Narita. It was one of less than a dozen flights around the United system during the peak of the pandemic. So really amazing that we were able to do it. But quite frankly, we were very aggressive in trying to resume the tourism business here on the island, largely because it was Guam's economic engine, right? And it was super important for us to bring flights back. The unfortunate thing is we brought flights back, people did not follow those flights. And so it's been very, very challenging for us. And so, over the course of the last couple of years, we've had to find very creative ways to utilize the asset, right? As you guys know, I have a lot of employees here on the island, right? Close to 1,000 employees that support our operation, whether it's a flight attendant base, a pilot base, our hangars, staffed by aircraft technicians in Tizen, our ground agents, our office staff. We have a lot of infrastructure that's necessary to support a fleet of airplanes here. And so what we've been able to do, because the business to Guam hasn't flourished the way we would like it, we've found different creative ways to continue to have these airplanes based here, to continue to have productive work for our workforce here, but utilize these airplanes to fly different places, right? And so you've heard the release. We're going to be flying from Tokyo to Taiwan. We're going to be flying from Tokyo to Palau. We're going to be flying from Tokyo to Mongolia. We recently launched service between Tokyo and Cebu. All of those flights have connectivity in and out of Guam. And so it's an amazing way for us to creatively utilize assets that are already deployed to this part of the world. Because as Mark said, or Kin said, it's aircraft is in high demand everywhere else, right? So it's not very difficult for United Airlines to say, hey, we need this airplane to fly between California and somewhere else. And quite frankly, Ken and myself have been strong advocates to find creative ways to keep those airplanes here, because once it leaves, it's very difficult for it to come back. And so That's what we've been doing to preserve the flying here. And quite frankly, because those airplanes are here and some of them are not being used every day, it gives us the ability to serve the same markets that we've been serving for a long time that we know are going to rebound at some juncture with everybody's collaboration here.
Thank you, Sam. And before we ask the additional questions, please know you do have paper as well as pen on the table. If you have any questions, we definitely won't have time for it today, but we can certainly pose them to the panelists of both sections so that we can submit that, and we will be publishing frequently asked questions after this event, and we will also put on our websites, both GHRA and GTTA, the presentations as well as the FAQs. Ken-san, in addition to airlines, obviously lodging is such an important part of our industry, and it's part of the shell packages that we've seen a lot of our tourists, when they come to Guam, whether it's a wholesale package or it's FIT, they always have at least the airline, of course, and the lodging. Where have you seen where a lot of people say that Guam has become more expensive and room rates are too high, but can you really talk about how room rates have compared to 2019 and what costs and additional fees that you've seen increase as well?
By the way, I don't want to reveal the price that our group has to be exact, so I'll go like a percentage wise. The ADR, which we call that hotel is average rate existed, is actually compared to the 2019 to 2024. Actually, it's slightly dropped. That's what it is. It's not significant, however, flat to a little less. That's what it is. And also, some of the costs we operated in the year 2024 versus 2019 is total cost of the drop is actually not drop. Increase is about 32%. And actually, the Mel already spotted about the labor cost. Yes, it's exactly 25% increase taking place.
So, Mark, if hotel rates have stayed the same or actually gone down, how do we account for the fact that even though arrivals are down by 55%, the TAF is actually is only down about 30%? How does that work?
Yeah, there are only three reasons that could happen. We looked at all of them. And the first is rate, obviously, but we confirmed not only through Ken-san, but also other hotel groups and the STR reports. It is correct that the rates today, contrary to some assertions you've heard, are the same as they were in 2019. The average rate of the hotels is the same despite costs going up 20 to 30%. So it's not rate. It could be extended length of stay, because if you have fewer people coming but they stay longer, that would account for more room revenue, right? And just to be clear, the TAF is the hotel occupancy tax income, right? It's 11% on room income. But we also confirm now the most recent GVB surveys, and we haven't done the data collection in a while, but pre-COVID, it was 3.2 average night stay. The latest one about 2 years ago showed almost a 4-night average stay. That's a 33% increase and would represent that difference. But we went back and checked with the hotels. And for Japan and Korea markets, there is no increase in the average length of stay. So if it's not rate and it's not length of stay, what can it be? The only thing it can be, and this is what all the hoteliers confirmed to me, is it's the military and construction people staying for 14 to 21 days. One guy in a room by himself for 21 days equals 14 tourists staying 2.3 people to a room 3.5 nights. One is 14. And so that's the answer. And the last point I want to make on this, it's a really important point. The hotels, I know you're not going to want to hear this, David. You're down 30%, we're down 55%. Okay? So feel better, because the retailers, the transportation companies, the tourist attractions, it's really important for policymakers to understand this. We say, well, the TAF is only down 30%. Yeah, but the industry is down 50%. The room revenue is down 30%. So good for the government, for the TAF. Not good for the hotels to be down 30%, but down 30% instead of 55%. And that threshold difference between being down 55% and being down 30% is the difference between being able to stay alive and stay in business.
Okay, well, given that, David, can you explain then, is there any real benefit to the military business or these contractor businesses to attractions?
Actually, absolutely. The challenge is the military business is a fraction of leisure travel. Most of the business is actually coming here for work. I need to say this though. There is a federal interest in making sure we as hospitality survive because we provide a very important component of what they call quality of life here. They come here and the contractors stay at the hotels, don't go to the attractions a lot or don't go to Zoo, right? But they're here feeding the tourist attraction fund and feeding the hotels. But when you come to retail outlets, I mean, talk to Monty and look what's over at Tumon Sands right now. A lot of them are not going out there. We as an attraction, again, they are a fraction of our business, but really what we really need to drive is restore our tourist business, our leisure travel, because again, being down 50% does not allow us to survive very long.
So, Dave, with regards to that, what can hoteliers do with regards to promoting that or including more of those packages? And how would you say that it adds in with guest concierge type services?
Yeah, let me first say, I just met with Ken yesterday. What a nice question, right? We're partnering, right? And we've got to identify the niches that we need to go after. But the real challenge, and everybody needs to understand this, when we're down 50%, we've lost 50% of our staff. And when we've lost 50% of our staff, we've lost quality people to other businesses. And I think I need to go back to GCC and the rest of these guys. The apprenticeship program is great. I've got 2 apprentices working for us. It's not enough. There's a lot of money still coming in as a result of the H2 labor coming in. I think we need to partner with DOL and with the legislature, identify some of the funding to teach our people customer service. One of the things that we're going to work on right now is we're going to work really hard to fix our product, mow our lawns, paint our buildings. But if we don't take care of the software and take care of the software in parallel to taking care of the hardware, we're just inviting people to come here for a bad experience. And so I really, again, want to work with whoever's in charge of labor besides David Del Sola, figure out how we can take those dollars that are sitting right now that are available to help partner and train our people to deliver a great experience.
And just to add to that, GHRA does have an apprenticeship program. We've had one since 1986. But also last year, we started a hotelier internship program, paid internship. And so that's something we're hoping that the businesses in other sectors can also talk to DOL about, is a paid internship program with high school students. It's kind of like a pre-apprenticeship that starts at age 16, and they do it after school and then also the summers. And so we've started that with a couple of hotels, and we're hoping it can expand with DOL to other sectors like restaurants, retail, and guest experiences.
Ken-san, from your perspective as a hotelier, what do you think needs to be done to enhance the guest experience on the island?
Yep. The dynamic of the customer orientation is changing. And of course, infrastructure we have, especially like a transportation, we have this structure. However, the demand is a little changing. And actually, from the point to the point, we need to have a more easier access to it. Say, stroll starting, the Mobi started, and those kind of, the share ride kind of concept is necessary. Competing against those, major cities, actually the public transportation is what we are lacking about. Those are the things we have to work on it and make it happen. And about the service side of the software, actually GHRA always trying to come up with a certification for the guide or the concierge. Many dynamic of the probably optional tours or the probably the service available on island changing. I think we have to refresh it and make sure that each hotel has a similar kind of standard to provide to the guest.
With regards to the change of the type of customer and actually their expectations, we do have Kirayama-san, who is with Japan Airlines. He's a sales director, and he works with all of you. I'm sorry. He's from Japan with United Airlines, and he works with all of you for contracts and stuff. And so we would like to get his perspective from United Airlines out of Japan market. Really, what's going to make the difference, and what have you seen in the Japan market to help us recover and increase our market share, outbound market share?
Sure. Thank you for the question. Right after college, I started with Japan Airlines. So partially true. So and I'd like to share, a flavor of the Japan source market perspective here today. And before going to kind of my response to your question, I'd like to set stage for my answer. Maybe two things I'd like to share, which is really important. In Japan, market has changed a lot. The exchange rate, and not to mention, but the distribution. Our partners, agencies, they had to adjust their size and businesses in order to survive. And so do we. And the other thing is that this current situation, as all of you know, is not sustainable. So those two things in mind, that it is important to develop a marketing strategy in two ways. One is that the short-term strategy. There are a series of events on Guam which should attract a lot of the tourists here. Also, that in source market, we need to keep awareness of Guam so that we won't get forget. The other element is the mid and long-term strategy, which is probably more important. This is where we need to address why source market travelers, Japanese travelers, are traveling to come to Guam. And that probably resonate what Jerry mentioned earlier, that the must-see element. Those are things that we need to develop. And in order to do so, I think that this is where that we can leverage the professional consultants, especially in Japan. They know a local market in and out. They could support us. And there are several consultant companies that I can think of right now. So all in all, I think two things I leave you is that we need to understand that the market has changed, and also we need to address a why.
Okay, so Mark, we've heard today the plan. This is GVB's efforts to try and recover the tourism economy. As an individual private business owner, do you have confidence that the plan will work? And what should be our expectations in terms of any improvements?
I like that microphone's louder. Or David's louder, one of the two. No, I guess it was David. Do I have confidence in the plan? I do if it's executed well. And if it's not, then I don't. And executed well means strong leadership, smart goals that are adhered to and driven, speed of action, and funding. Without those, we're doomed. But if we have those, I think we have a very good chance. The three core components, the pillars, airline incentives, new marketing efforts, fresh ways of approaching the marketing, and destination development. As far as how quickly it will happen, the reality is we're not going to blink our eyes and suddenly the destination development's all done January 1st. The airline incentives, if we get them signed today, I'm not sure where we're at with that, but speed of action is really important. If we get them signed today, we have a chance to have them for the spring to start. Otherwise, it's summer. Destination development will probably not really get going. We have to get funding. We have to get going. It's probably summer by the time that starts, right? So the reality is, if we take immediate aggressive action today, then the first half of 2025 will most probably look very much like 2024. But the second half of 2025 will start to achieve that annualized 830,000 packs that Kin mentioned, and it rolls into 2026. I'm sorry, that's the reality. The reality is, if we take aggressive action today and hold our feet to the fire and lead this effort aggressively, then the second half of next year should be better. That's realistic. There's a lot to be done, and it's going to take a lot of effort. On a positive note, I can't say how strongly and happy I am that the governor's here, the lieutenant governor's here, the senators are here, the industry's here. You can tell by the attendance, it's very important to everybody. And I do have confidence that together we can actually turn this thing around. But it's going to take a lot of work starting right now.
Speaking of senators, and especially the incoming ones, I think it's important to note that funding is very crucial. And also destination management, you mentioned. I've been involved with GVB for a very long time, and Jerry and I have gone to the legislature twice before when Hot Bond was actually introduced. But in both cases, the money was actually, majority of the money was diverted to other projects. And the intended purpose was kind of, it missed the mark, I think. And Ken showed in the presentation, right, where some of our critical infrastructure issues plague us today because we did not commit that bond money to those projects to remediate. So can you talk about the distinction between tactical recovery and long-term strategic planning, and how we need to really dedicate the hot bond, and we call it a lockbox for a reason, it should be secured, but how can we really dedicate the hot bond funding to capital improvement projects?
So tactical is things that can be executed within 90 to 120 days and have results within a year. Strategic is longer term, 3 to 5 year, more like Tourism 2020. And to your point, so PKF Consulting called Tourism 2020 a remarkable plan that has the potential to transform the island, and then went on to say, but most of the goals weren't accomplished because it wasn't funded. And they're right. I have to admit they're right. So a plan is a plan. You put the plan up on the screen, PowerPoint, we've got a plan, it's great, it needs to be executed. So execution in the short term, that's tactical now, today. Strategic talks to rebranding, chasing new markets, looking at other things. That's sort of longer term, short term, long term, immediate versus longer term. And in terms of the hot bond, you're right. I lived it, and I still live it every day it floods, right? But the island is more than just Tumon, right? The island is the island. And I think that's why in the short term tactical plan, we took great pains. You know, in Kin's presentation, it was $12 to $15 million for product improvement. The intention is for most of that to be spent outside of Tumon. It's really important that the visitors have a great experience around the island. The sightseeing spots are clean. The toilets are clean. It's a place you would go with your kids. It's really important. So the money in the tactical plan is very heavily outside of Tumon. We do need to paint and water blast and clean and spend a couple $1 million in Tumon. Just get it sort of looking pretty, right? But the hot bond needs to follow immediately for 2025. And the hot bond has to be heavily centered on Tumon. It has not had any investment in 30 years, any real investment. We have to put it back. This is where all the tourists stay, right? They need to travel around the island and have safe, clean places to visit. And the tactical plan needs to put a focus on that. But when the hot bond comes, I beg you to please take a little bit for the rest of the islands, 10% or whatever you want, it's fine. But we have to put the money back into Tumon right now. It's 30-year-old product and it looks like it.
Okay, Sam, to close out this section, from your perspective as a bedrock business within the tourism industry, what do you think are the most important things that are going to be needed to make the plan a success?
Wow, that's a loaded question. I think, if you listen to everything you're taught in school, the first step to recovery is admitting you have a problem. And I think that's what we're doing today, right? I mean, so oh my God, we spent 40 minutes with introductions because there are so many people in this room that have a stake in the game, right? And so I think that's impressive. Everybody who is living and breathing it understands that we have a problem, that we need to work together to fix it. And we've got a bunch of incoming legislators. We heard the governor speak from the heart that she knows we have an issue, and she's committed to giving us the resources or finding a way for us to get to a way to get these things done, right? And so I think the best path forward for everybody is to make sure that we are talking to each other, that we are engaging in solutions, right? So I don't think anybody at the table has the singular answer. And I'm sorry, I don't want to offend anybody, but like government people who run governments for a living don't have all the answers themselves, right? And so that's why government people need to work with the private sector to make everything happen, right? And so working together, hashing it out is really what families do to make, successful relationships work, right? And so I don't think there's any lack of commitment from anyone. And I think the private sector, and I think the public sector, and I think everybody has been doing things. Everybody has been working tremendously hard. I think the problem is we haven't had an opportunity to put our heads together and figure out how to work together. And I think that's what we're going to do today. I hope that today is the springboard for a flourishing relationship with everyone. We put our heads together and find a way to kind of drive a plan that makes sense, right? And so, Kin walked through this plan, and I think he quoted George as saying, like, this is the first iteration of a plan, right? And so this can't be the final plan, because not everybody in this room has had an opportunity to raise their hand and say, hey, what about this, right? Governor, effectively pointed out that we don't have any of the mayors in this office. They have a big stake in the game. Let's give them an opportunity to opine on the plan, participate in the discussion, and drive it forward. And then everybody just needs to stand behind it, and let's work together to make it happen, right? Let's not let anything get in the way. Everybody wants Guam to flourish. Everybody wants tourism to rebound the right way. And I think we got the right people in the room. I think we can do it. I hope we can work together to make it happen. So I'm committed to doing it. Ken's come from Japan just to participate in today's conversation. We have an amazing working relationship with everybody here in the room, and we've planted our flag here. We expect to stay here. So we're going to do everything we can to make it work.
Okay, let's finish. Let's finish with a lightning round. I'd like each of you to complete this sentence. So starting with you, Dave, the plan's now published. Is it now most important that we
stand together, unify? It's been really difficult, but I think we can do it.
Ken-san.
Communicate without boundaries and execute the plan.
Mark.
Execute the plan.
Sam.
Ditto.
So my response is that I think hearing all those discussions, that reminded me of a famous quote of saying that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So I say go together fast.
Thank you. Let's give a round of applause to the panel. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ken Kiriyama from United Airlines in Japan. Yes, thank you, Sam Shinara, United Airlines, Ken Yanakasawa, PHR, Ken, and then, of course, Mr. Mark Baldiga from Baldiga Group. We'd like to bring back up Mr. Kin Cook. He is the chairman for the Recovery Task Force, and he's the vice chairman for GBB's board. We also have Mr. George Chu. He actually has graced his presence today. Thank you. He was off island. He flew in as well. Thank you, George. He is the chairman for the Guam Visitors Bureau and the executive vice president for TAN Holdings. And then, of course, we have Mr. Jerry Perez, but I do know that he has to prepare for this next meeting, which they pushed. But we have Nadine Leon Guerrero, who will be staying back. But we're definitely going to keep the panel up here. And we'd like to go ahead and just power through, like I said. For those who, are staying for lunch, please know we will be serving in about 15 minutes. So thank you for being patient with us. It's a lot of information to share.
Okay, so you start.
So, George, I understand from the presentation that around $35 million is needed for year one alone. About half of that money may be available, for example, with Mataping flood funds that will be replaced, and a bit from the GBB budget. How do you envision seeking the balance that is needed?
It takes money to make money, all right? So I don't want everybody to be scared away by the $35 million because, as you said, we have the Matapang money that's available. That's roughly between $12 to $14 million. So if you deduct the $14 million from the 35, we're down to $21 million. Now we have money set aside within GVB for airline incentives. We're talking between $5 to $7 million. So we take $7 million out from there. The $21 million that left with 7, you're down to $14 million. There's product enhancements, and Melanie Mendiola did a great job of showing what kind of funds are available within GHRA. Okay, we can't be lazy. It takes the interagency cooperation to make this plan work. GHRA has up to $20 million available to loan. There's the 50-50 program. It may seem a little bit hard, but 50-50 with them investing the money. There's the loans available if you get turned down by Kin Cook at Bank of Guam, that you can go and borrow money again at low interest rates. So that product enhancement for the community is another $11.5 to $12 million. So if you can get that through working with GHRA, that takes a $14 million minus the $12 million. You're down to $2 million of the 35 that we need to find. Now, GHRA had a $29 million budget. I'm sure there's some fat in there. So we're working. I know Dee Hernandez has done a great job of going through what she needs at destination management, and she's already found, I think, $1.5 million by just cutting away the fat that she knows she doesn't need. So I'm sure there's within GHRA itself, the board was a little bit handicapped because the legislature decided to pass a budget that allowed the general manager full financial control of the funds within GHRA. So the board had no idea what was actually budgeted and how. GVB. The board. I'm sorry, I meant GVB. I've been reminded. Yeah. So the legislature basically gave the general manager full fiscal authority over the budget. So the board really had no opportunity to review how the money was being allocated, how it was being spent, other than it's printed on the website. So I think, again, it takes I'm not saying, all it takes is further collaboration between the board and the management of GVB. The management and the employees of GVB have done a fantastic job. They've been there at the job for a number of years. You have Nadine, 30 years at GVB. I'm sorry I'm giving away, but with employees like that, they know what to do, but I think they also need be able to trust the board and work together with the board and have some. It basically, again, comes down to a united collaboration between not just between the board members of GVB and employees of GVB, but interagency cooperation. You saw the sign up there, DPR, Public Works. Who's going to change the light bulbs? Who's going to clean the restrooms? It would seem like it's a really simple answer, but yet there's interagency battles that are just like a waste of time. We need to be just working together and addressing these issues, find out whose budget is going to be used to spend where. And I'm pretty sure the first $35 million is not the issue. Once you get tourism rolling again, now the second year you say we need $24 million. If you're successful in your first year, that $24 million will shrink. So I'm hoping that it takes money to make money, and if you spend the amount of money that we're going to do, and what Mark Baldiga has said, it has to be. The plan is a plan, but without the funding behind it, it's just a piece of paper. So we got to make sure we all work together and have faith in this business. With this room full of people here, we know that tourism is a vital part of our economy. We can't rely on the U.S. military to keep filling up our hotel rooms. If we do, we probably need GHRA to increase the federal budget.
Been trying.
So Sophie's gonna say $159 a night for a Hyatt Regency room. Come on. Tsubaki's gonna say it should be $259. If you look at the federal budget for San Francisco, it's like $250. They have peak seasonal rates. It doesn't stick at $159. So if it's January, February, March, the rate for the hotel for the military could go as high as $290 because that's what we're selling our rooms for. Why would we want the military at $159, right? So those are other areas that we can look at. Again, that is only going to help the hotels. It's not going to help the small retailers. The small retailers are the ones who rely on the tourists that are really hurting. The 50% decline, I think I see Song, my CFO for my retail group. I can guarantee you she's going to say, what do you mean 50%? We're way below 50% compared to pre-COVID. So that's just an average number right there. And again, cooperation and working together, a united front, And all these items that we talked about, airline incentive, marketing, and destination development will help us. Thank you.
Yes, you bring up the per diem, and that's something we need the whole community behind. We've been trying for a couple of years, trying to work with the congressman as well as with the governor. We need the senators behind this. We need the military partners behind this. I see Guam Chamber of Commerce is here with Catherine. Saipan and Hawaii have both gotten increases twice. Since 2009, Guam has 0 increases. 0 since 2009. And so it's not just lodging, guys. It's $159 is lodging room rate. There's also meals and incidentals for Wi-Fi. That's telecom or laundry or other types of ancillary type services. There's 3 types of per diem that has not increased that we haven't seen since 2009. Guam is way overdue, and Hawaii got, for the first time last year, seasonal rates. So everybody else is growing except Guam.
Okay, so this next question is for Jerry. Now, it involves airline incentives. Now, everyone knows that you've done a fantastic job in closing Taiwan's incentives, but there's concern that the window necessary for closing on incentives for Korea might already have been passed. Can you explain what you're doing and what the progress has been to get incentives for airlines from Korea underway?
We've actually jump-started that already and are communicating with the airlines. They already know that we've got an amount certain to get going, but they also heard the governor say that she's got an extra $7 or $8 million to come, and so it's on that basis that we're planning and moving forward.
Okay.
And everything that my chairman and my vice chairman says, I agree.
Well, with that said, Jerry, there is a saying, inspect what you expect. So what is GBB management going to do to incorporate like key performance measures or SMART goals so that we can regularly track the progress and milestones for each goal so that throughout the short-term and long-term strategic and tactical plan, we really know what's being accomplished?
Okay, there are 2 parts to that, Mary. The first part is what we're doing today. We have laid out key performance measures already, and we've got some goals to achieve in terms of generating over 100% increase from Japan, 108% increase in Japan, and a 9 to 10% increase in Korea. So the next part of this story is his meeting. He's calling one pretty soon, I guess tomorrow, right? And we're going to start talking about the longer term metrics as it relates to the evolving plan.
I'd like to add on that. I think that's been brought up in the recovery plan. If you ask me what was the most important KPI to me, market share. Market share. Okay, because we can't control the recovery of Japan. We can't control the recovery outbound of Korea, but we can do something about trying to regain our market share that we've lost. And as that pointed out, just getting back to halfway, a 1% increase is a huge, huge benefit to the community, to the economic well-being of Guam, to all those who are involved in the tourism sector. So that's one of my key KPIs that I'll be looking at, increasing our market share.
Okay, so Jerry, you heard the industry mention that it's time for a new focus on new marketing approaches. How do you intend to achieve that?
Carefully.
You care to elaborate?
Yeah.
No.
We just made an announcement. I want to really thank Sam Shinohara with the April 2nd starting of the flights from United Airlines from Taiwan to Guam. People may not think of Taiwan as a big market, but having that flight keeps the plane in our region. You heard Sam mention, you lose an airplane, you're never going to get it back. By having that flight from Taiwan to Guam, the feedback from the travel agents has been the most positive. The flight's not even going to start until April, okay? And people are already talking about the United Airlines flight. China Airlines already started flying, and yet people are still talking about the United Airlines flight because it's a daytime flight. I just arrived back on Guam at 4:30 this morning, taking that red eye, coming back into Guam. I don't know. I'm sure every one of you guys have taken that red-eye flight into Guam. Coming back on United, the tourists will be arriving like 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, if I'm not mistaken. That's going to be the first time that we have, aside from Japan, we get a flight from Asia that comes in when the sun's still out. Okay, that alone is a huge marketing tool. The agents are excited about selling that flight. Trying to have a family with a crying baby arriving at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's a no-go. I mean, it's nice to have an early check-in. That I heard about the Ken-san saying he's going to allow early check-in. Ooh, yeah. I'm sure your board's going to really love that free early check-in. But that helps. But it really doesn't. It still doesn't mean. It doesn't mean much when you're waiting. When you're holding your 2-year-old baby waiting through immigration and they're crying and in the middle of the night. But so that daytime flight that United proposing is the first of its kind in a while. Okay, and I think that's going to be a very successful flight. There's a guarantee associated with that. But I think because of the timing of the flight, the flight will sell. And once you sell that flight, then the airline incentive gets smaller and smaller. So it looks like it's a large amount that we're going to be putting out there, but that's just to get them to fly. But once they start flying and the seats start selling, the airline incentive shrinks down, and that's something I'm really looking forward to in April.
I'd just like to add to that. Actually, what he said is true in terms of the hour. That's a very strong competitive advantage. And the second thing I wanted to say is that, and Sam's here. Sam, I've been here a long time, so I remember why you guys used to fly to Bali and to Hong Kong. And it's not so much that they're financially viable for the carrier, but it's utilization of aircraft and the ability to keep the equipment in our region as opposed to losing it. So that plays into a lot of I suspect, what you guys are doing now in terms of marrying the hub on Guam and the Tokyo Narita, connection to Cebu, to Ulaanbaatar, to Kaohsiung, and other destinations that you normally would not have pursued.
Well, we have to fill the planes both ways too for load factor. So that's important. Earlier, Nadine and Dee, they did give me an update that the strategic plan is actually published on the website. We will share that link with you along with the other presentations. But Ken, you did such a great job presenting the recovery the plan. What are the important elements, do you think, of the plan that everybody should walk away with?
Well, immediately, if you want to pinpoint one, I think the airline incentive piece is the most important for right now. For two things. One, it's going to give us immediate, boost in numbers. To the chairman's point about increasing market share, which is what needs to be done. And second, it's time constrained, right? We need to move quick on those because if we miss a window, then that pushes their. Airlines aren't just having planes laying around that we can say, here's your incentive. We need you to come next week. It takes. I don't know the true number. I know it's like a quarter, 90 to 120 days to kind of reschedule and book the flights and get all that going. So to me, the most important piece to move on now, if we want to take away with anything, is funding for the airline incentives. Gov had already communicated to the Korean airline partners in Korea the $8 million, which was great. Now we got to put that into action. We got to make that actually happen. So that's number one. But then the other second, I guess, just as equally important is our marketing boost. As Ken said from United in Japan, we need to really continue to market strongly in Japan, build that demand, boost that demand. And without a strong and new and fresh marketing efforts, when we're competing with Thailand and Vietnam, and those governments are like double downing on their investment in tourism. Those guys came out of pandemic, guns blazing. We're winning all the tourists in this area, and they have. And you see their bounce back since pandemic of visitors from Japan. They've captured all the market share we've lost. And the reason for that is marketing. We can't continue to market the way we've always done it. We need to look at new ways, new things, get excited, get fresh. And that can be done even without much product development here in Guam. Perception is tons of this, right? First impressions, just how people see us is one thing, and that can be controlled again by the way we market our island. Our destination is there. The product is still good. Is it old? Yes. Does it need to be updated? Yes. But it's still a good product, and we can still offer so much great things that travelers from Japan are looking for. So those are the two tops, but immediately one would be the airline incentive piece.
Okay, so Ken, you've got the plan done now. You've explained what's important. What's the next steps for the recovery committee?
Next steps, as you know, we mentioned SMART goals, and we're meeting tomorrow actually to start talking about them. We've got a whole list of SMART goals, and these are just kind of tactical steps we can take to get things going. In addition to that, I think another important piece would be to engage a marketing advisor, someone who is really strong, who can really provide us some good guidance and some good ideas on how best to reach, you know, when I say new markets, not even new markets as in new market countries, but even just new markets within Japan, right? There's probably a whole segment of travelers that don't even know about Guam because we haven't been marketing to them the right way. You know, there's tons of things that we could do to improve our marketing efforts, and I think having a real strong advisor would be really impactful there.
And you know, I might add to that, Jay, it's not just about what we've discussed here, because Tumon Bay, probably 90% of the arrivals in Tumon Bay sees Guam within that prism. But Tumon Bay is not Guam. And to Mark's point earlier, the whole island is Guam. The whole island needs to be fixed, okay? And you're quite right, Mark, that we need to focus on Tumon because after Pleasure Island, there's really been nothing significant around here, and we need to improve product. But we also need to bring in the village mayors. That was alluded to earlier. I don't see anybody here from any the mayor's council or anything, but that element, Keen, is another aspect of the next meeting I think that we need to talk about.
Okay, so finishing up, as we did with the last panel, finish the sentence. The plan is now finished. It's now most important that we, starting with George.
I'm going to follow what Mark said, and it's going to be execute, execute, execute.
Okay. Ken?
Just so I don't go the ditto route, I'm going to say it's, you know, since we started talking this recovery plan, there's been a big surge in working together and getting all these different stakeholders and people from throughout the community. So now that it's published and now we actually have to execute, it's important for engagement and ownership. And the way we do that is by getting involvement from everyone. So I'm big on the community and the collaborative part. So I'm looking forward to working with everyone. Might have to get a bigger room for our working group meetings.
There you go. Jerry.
My word, now.
Excellent. All right, everyone. That concludes the presentation. Let's give them all a big round.
Thank you, everybody. And with that said, it is really important, again, government, private sector, industry partners working together. Thank you for being here. Please enjoy lunch. We appreciate your attendance and commitment. Thank you.